Hi, so this is the follow-up to my previous video about creating samples using a template. I've changed my workflow, so I thought to update it, but let me just recap quickly. If you want to spend more time, the other video will go into more detail, but you create a region like this, and then you go to insert a new Midi item, and that creates, and then if you double click on that, in my last video I think the maximum I went to was 2. That's the length, like a minim length. This time I'm using a semi-brief. So make sure your MIDI length is long enough. I normally start on C1 because I like the note quite deep, but if I double click on that line, it's got like 4, and if I do a D, the next note up, I can, and if you make many of them, what I do is normally is C major, but you can make it any scale you want. You can make it chromatic, but I'm after range, so I find like working within a scale works best for me. So if you highlight, select all, and then if you just change the value to 1, it'll reduce it by 1 square. Yeah, so there's your gap, and it's up to you how long you make the note, but very often there's a tail after the MIDI note is finished, and this gap would capture the tail. I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to bring up one that I was using before. So basically you create as many notes as what you want, and I go up to C4. You could go higher. They're all the notes, 3 beats long, if you like, just under a semi-brief, with a little gap in between. Yeah, as I say, to catch the any reverb or effects that comes after the MIDI note. I also included a master track. I'll explain this later on, but you put the master track by going to View and just click on master track. It's like creating another track. On my MIDI track, I've added a VST, and it just so happens that it's Arturia, but it could be anything. I've also used Reaper's plugins. Yeah, I've used a lot of stuff. So it doesn't matter what you use, but put your VST on the MIDI track. The next thing to do is create another track down here, and you route the MIDI track into this track. Yeah, so this track receives from track 1. This is track 1, and it's sending MIDI data to this track, and you're going to record audio onto this track, and you do that by going to this record icon down here, click it, go record output, and I'm doing it in stereo, but you can do it in mono. So record output stereo, click on that, and then arm it for record. Let me, for example, let me do another one. Let's say, for argument's sake, 2 oscillators stereo. So this, I've chosen my What you should do as well is, it could be too loud. All the faders will be full on, so you have to adjust the volume. But let's get an idea of the sound. What I've also done is left a gap. Yeah. This is so that you get the beginning of the note, and if there's a, yeah, whatever. So it starts not exactly on the first beat of the bar. So it's not clipping. Yeah, it's not clipping, so we're alright. Go back to beginning. So what you do now is you just let it run, and the MIDI will convert it into audio. So press record. On this example there's no effects, so it ends pretty cleanly. So since there's a lot to do, I'll come back to you and continue when it's near the end. Okay, stop it. It's quite a long process because the MIDI notes are quite long, 3 beats. But as you see, we have a nice clean audio below. If you're happy with the audio, if you're happy with the length of the notes, the duration, I would save your MIDI template now. You do that by double click, go up to File, and then go Export to New MIDI File. And this is the one that I created before, and then you just click Save, but name it, and then that's all you need for now with the MIDI template. So you close that down, and now you work with your audio. Because this is such a clean audio track, what you can do, if it wasn't so clean, then there are other ways of doing the next step. But because this is so clean, if you just press D on your keyboard, it brings up the dynamic split. For me, sometimes this doesn't work, and I have to do it manually. But you can change the settings. As you see now, there's supposed to be like little dotted lines to show where you're gonna split. It doesn't work for me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This hasn't worked, so I just click split anyways, and I can see that it has split them. So go to the beginning, make sure that you have your snap enabled, and then just move your cursor and bring the ends in. In fact, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so they're all the same length. You'll see why in a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. So they're all the same length, and it's worth checking actually that the split hasn't done anything strange to them. But it looks okay. So go and then highlight them all, which is easy to do. You just shift and click, and then as the cursor changes, just move them in and just leave a little gap for the tail. So it plays and then there's a little gap here. So when I've done that, what I do next is I highlight them all again, and then I press Control and Shift and N, and this increases the volume to maximum, and then I bring it down to -6 decibels. This is just my preference. You can leave it at full if you want, but I find that sometimes you get artifacts if it's too loud. But if you bring it down to 6, or just reduce it a bit, and they're all the same volume then. These are, as I say, they're very clean samples, but some are not. The next thing I do, because everything is highlighted, I bring my cursor up to the top, and then I press Control and Alt together, and then I just move in. Yeah, you can have it out however much you want, but I just, so it doesn't clip the there's no clicks at the end, I just fade it out, and that's done it with all of them. And that's the audio. That's as much as I do on the audio. I don't have any effects on it because I just want the raw sound, really. But my point of this video is to show you what I do with regions, which I've just learnt about, but it has helped me a lot with the workflow. To create a region, it's easy, really. I mean, if I maybe try at the end, how do I delete? Remove region. Okay, so if I want to create a region around my audio, first of all I just highlight it, and then I've because there's a system to this, you can do it quite quickly. So if you move your cursor back up to the top where the little hand is, then press Shift and R, creates a region, and then if you continue to press just Shift and double click in the region area, it brings up the edit region where you can name it. Now it's important to name it because we're actually naming the notes, and that's why if you're using a chromatic scale or a C major like me, or a D major, D minor, whatever scale you're using, you just to keep a track on what notes or which went after rendering. So this one is 5C because it's the last one. So 5C, and then just click OK, and then it names it at the top. Now you have to do, there might be an easy way of doing it. I'll just press ESC to get out. But I've named them all individually. As I say, there might be an easy way, I don't know it. But that's the most time-consuming thing you would have to do. And once you've done it, I mean, it's done. You don't have to do it again. And then you can save this as a template, a track template, or a project template, just by going to Project Templates, Save Project Template. But before I would do that, I would get rid of this audio, because the next time you open up the template, you're going to have this audio there. So what you can do is, if you save this, so you don't lose it, save project, blah blah blah, and then you save it, and then go to project templates, save project, and then it would be blank. You see, you would have your VSTs, you have your master track, but you just wouldn't have the audio. So the next time you open it up, you have a blank template to start from the beginning. Yeah. So it's just the audio you delete. You keep the template already there. So after that, we render it, because that's all you need to do. You have the finished audio. It's all neatly cut up. Go down to render. Now, by default, I think it goes to master mix. You don't want that. So you go to region, render matrix. Yeah. And then you have two options, all project regions or selected regions. I've just gone for all projects. The important bit is that here, so if you count all these up, they come to 28, and that's correct. You've got 28 regions here. If you click on region manager, this comes up, but all I think this is that you color code it, and I don't bother with that. If you go to region matrix, this is the important bit. This enables you to render tracks. The one I've just deleted there is the master track, because at the moment I don't want to record from the master track. I want to render track 2. So down here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'll get that later. But track 2 is here, and all you have to do is just run your cursor, press and run it along, and therefore you've highlighted this track to render. By default, this tail icon is clicked. I would unclick it. What this does is when you render a sample, it adds on a tail again for any reverb or effects that's after the sample. If you're recording at quite a high sample rate, I mean, I'm doing a 48, which I think is pretty good and standard, but I mean, you can go higher if your computer takes it. But you know, if you have a lot of samples, especially if you're doing chromatic, it's a lot of disk space. It's a lot of external disk space, and I find that just having the basic sample without a tail on can reduce the sample size. And anyways, in post-production, I like to add effects, so you don't really need them embedded onto the file, if you see what I mean. So I just like to have it as dry as possible, just with a little tail at the end. So the region, once you've created them all, named them all, it's important that you have a size or a length to your region, because if you go to wildcards, and if you go to the project information, if you go down to region and click on that, it's going to name like C1s, you know, sorry, 1C, 1D, 1, yeah, it's going to name your audio with the correct note and pitch. You've got to realize that if you just had the region all the way across to the next sample, you're going to get a larger file, and you're also going to get any reverb or effects that comes after the sample. I don't want that. You may want that. So it's important how big you keep your region size. Yeah, I mean, if you have it very small, you're only going to record maybe 2 bars. If you ever run 3, you record 3. Yeah, so each section is the amount that you're going to record. So it's important to understand that, you know, before you render, is that where do I want my recording to stop? I've included it one bar after the sample's finished. Yeah, the sample finishes here, but I've just allowed 1 bar just for any yes, just so it sounds natural, the ending sounds natural. So I've included my region to end just 1 bar after the MIDI. But that's your choice. You have to decide how much you want. And you do that with all of them. Yeah, they all end at the same. If you decided to end it sooner, therefore it would be clipped on this ending here. So it doesn't really matter where this is really. If your region ends here, all this is nothing. You're not going to hear this. All your effects and everything is not going to be there. So I have mine just there. Anyways, it's up to you, but you do that with all of them. So yeah, the regions are important. The next thing, since it's all marked down here, you could have multiple audio files, and as long as this line is highlighted, you're only going to record or render this line, this track. It's not going to touch anything else. That's the good thing about it. And once you've saved it as a template, and a project template, you can just recall this each time blank. It's always named for you. It's always the right length. And the VST just goes from there into there. And you have a perfect sample length each time, which is good for editing. After that, my settings are always the same. All I've done is put region as a name. I've chosen my browser. For example, let me put it in this one. I use full speed offline. It works quite well. Everything else 24 bits, blah blah blah. I click apply, and then I just press render. Yeah. And if I go to the file, if I go to these are all the files that I've just rendered, and I can put them into folders. Yeah. I'll do that later. So the other thing that I wanted to show you is that you could do exactly the same on another track using the same VST. So you make sure that you're receiving from what is it again? It's receiving from track 1. Track 1. So you're receiving audio MIDI data from track 1. Make sure your in record is, for me, stereo out audio, and make sure it's armed. Close this one down. It's not, unless you'll record over your project, and give it a test. I'm going to change the VST sound, so it's not always the same. Just choose another preset. oops, wrong one. I'm going to choose anything quickly, 3D, whatever that is, doesn't matter for now, and then just play, see what comes out. Check levels. Okay, that'll do. Just record that. Take it back beginning. And I'll come back to you later on. So when that's finished, you can stop, and again it's clean start and end. And this time I'm not going to use the D key on my keyboard. There's a manual way of doing it, which I think it just takes often just as long, because once you've checked it and made sure everything all right, it's just as quick doing it manually. So what I do is just make sure that the snap icon is done, and then because it's on snap and because you've got your regions to work from, and just press S. Yeah. And just move it up. At least you get a clean finish or a clean start. This is the most time consuming part really, and again I'll get back to you when I've finished. Right, so again the process is exactly the same. You highlight them all, and then you just bring them in to the region that you've indicated. Bring your cursor up to the corner, press Ctrl Alt, and just bring in however much you want. I just make sure that the end's clipped. I want to increase the volume, so I press Ctrl Shift N, and then I bring it down to -6 dB, just to normalize everything. And it's all faded out correctly, looks okay. Takes a minute, render, everything will be the same. 29 tracks. So this time I only want to record on the master track, which is down here. So everything's going to go through. These two tracks are going to go through this effect. Now I've just put Nectar on this, but again you can put any sort of effects, EQs, reverbs, whatever you want to put on. It's routed through, and then it goes to the master, and then this is the track that you're going to mix these tracks, and it's going to go to the master. So let's mix them roughly. Yeah, so just have this track going for now. Okay, a very quick mix, and then don't let it get too hot. For the sake of this video, that's fine. You've got different levels, but you'll spend a lot more time on it really, but as long as it's not peaking, and then we've got a render again, and this time it's going to be just from the master mix. Check it. So I'll put another folder, which is and we can have a listen to them. So that's it.